Whether you're dreaming of a retirement with sand between your toes and a cold one in your hand, hitting the road to chase the winds of adventure, or spending time with your grandchildren, this show is intended to help you get there. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement with your host, Josh Knoll. You've worked too hard throughout your career to spend your retirement worrying. So sit back and kick up your feet because we've got lots of financial tips and tricks to share to help you get exactly where you want to be. Here's Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement. That's right. We've got a brand new show today for our brand new year. Longtime listeners, casual listeners, new listeners, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Josh Knoll here. Michelle is off again this week, but do not worry. She will be back next week. In her place, we welcome in one of our regular co-hosts, Mr. Jay Stubbs, the director of the Gulf Coast for Providence Partners, which also happens to be the sponsor of the show. Jay, how you doing?
Doing great, Josh. Good to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And guess what, Jay? We're like a Fox football announcing team. We're a three-man booth today.
That's right.
That's right. Joining us in place of Tom Brady, joining us on the third mic, is GCFA team member and producer Pedro Cardozo. He's the manager of our Orange Beach office location. Pedro, how are you doing?
Oh, Happy New Year, guys. It's exciting to be here back with you guys again.
Yes, it is. We're excited to be back in studio. We are back in Coastal College's recording studio, beautiful downtown Fairhope, ready to put together another great show for those of you that are tuning in. Listeners, Jay, Pedro, and I are here today to discuss financial topics relevant to those of you in or near retirement, living your best life along our part of the Gulf Coast. Here's what we've got in store for you today. First segment, we'll deep dive on our topic of the day. Second segment, about 25 minutes past the hour. That'll be news, headlines of the week. And then roughly 45 minutes-ish past the hour, stick around for our third segment. We call it Josh's Crystal Ball and Big Mouth. Of course, we're going to see what Jay and Pedro's big mouths and crystal balls has to say about a couple things. But either way, buckle up. We got a lot to get to. Quick background on me for those of you new to the show. Again, my name is Josh Knoll. I'm a fee-based financial advisor. I hold my FINRA Series 65 securities license, and I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. That's an independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. You can find more information on me and our team and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors by visiting our website, gulfcoastfa.com, or feel free to give us a call anytime, 251-327-2124. Now, if you just missed that contact info, go grab a pen and pad, have it ready because we repeat it several times throughout the show. All right, well, let's get on with our main topic. So today, each of our hosts, that would be me, Jay Stubbs, and Pedro Cardozo, we're going to talk about what we each learned. Here, the first brand new show of the year. We're going to talk about what we learned in 2024. We're going to talk about what we think 2025 has in store for us and our clients. And if we've got time, we're going to dive in a little bit on our hopes and our dreams and the things that we intend to lean into, and yet what we all consider yet another great opportunity to intentionally shape our lives and the lives of those close to us for 2025 and beyond. Do we have any regrets from this past year? Well, of course. And this is an open and honest show, so we'll probably share some of those. Do we have concerns about the state of the world? I mean, as we record this, it's kind of hard to imagine this, as it's been kind of a soggy end of the week here down in lower Alabama, but there's parts of California that are literally on fire. Of course, our family in New Orleans are some of our listeners directly affected by the terrible tragedy that happened over New Year's. There's many things in our world to worry about, but part of our argument, part of the outlook that we're going to talk about today is I say many times, and to be fair, I say this at the beginning of every year, there's never been a better time to be alive than right now. So with that framework, Jay and Pedro, if you allow, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Is that good?
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with what did we learn in 2024? And anybody that listens that is connected to me on Facebook or would like to connect to me on Facebook, I shared a post that I did back in, I think it was 2022 going into 2023. And my argument at the time was, with New Year's, there's always new intentions, new resolutions, things like that. But for the most part, as you get into your adult years, most of us would agree that years kind of become years. They tend to have a certain sameness to them, to a certain pattern. And for the most part, most of my adult life, that's been relatively true, except for, I would argue that 2022 and 2024 stood out as years for me. So on a business side, what I learned in 2024, which was a huge, huge pivot point in my career, is it's the year that I finally made the biggest jump that, in my opinion, you can take in our industry, and I formed my own RIA. What is RIA? That's Registered Investment Advisor, which I've always argued sounds a little confusing because that sounds like a person, not an entity. But an RIA is, by definition, technically an entity that where we are our own registered investment advisory firm. Formed that with the state of Alabama. They were a tremendous help. And of course, we also have some regulation from the SEC, not the football conference, but the SEC with the government. And what I learned was that my dad would always say, Jay's heard me say this many times, my dad would always say that anticipation of the event is actually usually much worse than the actual event, or much harder than the actual event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and thinking about it, you dig a deep hole, just muddling and what could go wrong, all these things you got to figure out. I understand.
Yeah, and so even as a very optimistic person, I was slightly terrified of forming my own RA. And what I learned in business-wise 2024 is I probably should have done it a year earlier. I was more ready than I thought. And due credit to the support structure that I'd built and the relationships I built, obviously one of those most important ones being my relationship with you, Jay Stubbs, and your firm, Providence Partners. And then, of course, with Aptus Capital Advisors on the investment management side, I was more ready than I thought. So that's okay. We've got it formed. We got kicked off. We're completely 100% independent, 100% locally owned. And looking back, I should have done it a year earlier, but I'm glad I did it in 2024. What I want to point out about that of being independent, and there's lots of good companies that insurance and investment professionals work for as W-2 employees. They're really good. You know, the Merrill Lynches of the world, the Morgan Stanleys, the Raymond James. We have lots of friends in that space that help their clients each and every day. But what independence means to those listening, when Josh says he's an independent, he really has no one above him that's giving him instruction or guidance. He is on where to put clients' money or what to do with clients in certain situations. His job is to sit and listen with clients, hear their plans, figure out what their futures and their goals want to look like, and then use the specialists he has relationships with that formed over the last several years to then go and implement design those plans and implement those plans. But no one company can tell Josh, I think your client needs to go here. Josh, you've done a great job of building this up to an independent platform. So congratulations to you. 2025 and beyond are going to be magnificent. Well, and Jay, so basically what I have now is I have one boss, the client. Right.
And Michelle.
And Michelle. Yeah, fair. Yeah, you could probably throw my kids, my dog, and my cat in there, but you get the idea. Now, personally, what I learned, listeners just heard me mention 2022. I had, like many people do, I had personal, I would call it tragedy. I think that's fair, in 2021. And what I learned in 2024, that the anger and the resentment that I had from the things that happened to me in 2021, which, as with anybody, when you look back on something, you have more clarity. Hindsight's 2020. They say that for a reason. And what you realize is, hey, this was never on things like that when they happen to you. They're never 100% someone else's fault, your fault. There's a blending there, right? And so, for me, learning the things in 2024 was really a learning year about what I needed to do better as a person, as a father, as a husband again, and to really kind of finally let go of that anger, primarily not only for my kids, as those of you all that have gone through, I'm referring to divorce, obviously, learn that you got to let go of that, but also for my new life and my new wife, and all the things that we want to do. It doesn't, all it is it becomes an emotional anchor. So that was probably the biggest lesson for me of 2024 of really starting to let go of those things. So my summary, 2024, I'm so happy I formed an RIA, and probably should have done it a year earlier, but I'm glad I did it. And personally, it's about really just intentionally leaning into finding peace all the way around, being chill as Jay is right here today in studio. Jay, you're up. What'd you learn in 2024?
Oh gosh, Josh. I too am an independent business owner.
Yes.
I have a partner in Andy Martin and Providence Partners and Providence Benefits up in Birmingham, Alabama. I have another partner named Todd Russell in his company up in Nashville. So we kind of cover the I-65, Tennessee through Alabama, and then down here along the Gulf Coast. But having done that now since 2023, I've learned that achieving balance between your work and your personal life as a business owner is a lot more challenging than it is for those of us that were actually W-2 employees for a company or a firm. Obviously, when you work for a company as a W-2 employee, you've got certain expectations and criteria that you need to meet. Working with a team's environment, no matter what it is, you want to give in your 8 to 5, so to speak. Well, as a business owner, Josh, we're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, you and I both know that is the worst thing that we can do is be on a Saturday when we need to be with our kids, or be on a Sunday when we actually should be in church. But I've also learned that sometimes it's okay I need to go over to the office on Sunday afternoon and take care of some stuff. I would have done that on years ago when I was an employee for a company. I would have said, okay, I'm going to give them my best effort Monday through Friday because those are the working days. Our working days are now whenever a client needs us, especially if there's an emergency situation or we've had somebody pass away or they need to get access to funds within their wealth management account because they something went wrong and they need to grab that money real quick. So we have to be on really each and every day. So I've learned in 2024, and I'm going to use it moving forward to 2025, I will always be available to the advisors and agents that I work with, but I'm going to have to try a little bit more better. A little bit better. I'm going to have to try a lot harder to make sure that I'm there for my kids as they grow up. I've got twin daughters, their sports, their activities. It's not that I've never been a part of it, but it was harder last year because as a business owner, you just wanted to focus on the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a good point, Jay. I'll say this before we turn to Pedro. As I have been self-employed now for half of my life, about 25 years, so I turned 50 recently. And
you are over the hill, buddy.
I'm turning the corner.
Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you. And years ago when I was in real estate, and as much as my phone rings now, Jay, I can be honest with you, back when I was in real estate, it never stopped ringing. And I was complaining to my dad one time, and my dad said something that has stuck with me forever, as many things he has said. He said, "Son, I'd be worried when that phone quits ringing."
That's right.
Yeah. So as an independent business owner, there are times you're like, oh man, gosh, you just try to find a balance. But you're right. Being on demand is what makes people want to do business with independent owners because, quite honestly, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Very good.
I don't mind taking calls or emails or text messages on a Saturday or Sunday or Friday night, just as long as that person knows, hey, I'm on outside of business hours time. I'll say I'm with my kids real quick. I'll call you right back.
Yeah, I get it. Love it. Pedro, what'd you learn 2024, business and personal? You had a big year too, man.
Well, 2024 was an exciting year for me and my family. I follow along with Jay as my business was in the restaurant industry, and it was extremely consuming. It was 15 hours, 16 hours a day. So learning that balance between family and work was very hard for me. So only now am I learning that.
And may I interject? I think the restaurant industry is the worst for family life balance. Is that fair?
That is very fair.
Okay, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Maria, my wife, would agree with you 100% too.
Yeah. And so you made the intentional decision to build a new life and a new career with something that allowed you, even though our careers are very demanding, as you've seen, you made the intentional decision to build something to where you didn't. I mean, how many hours a week were you working in the restaurant industry?
16 to 17 hours
a day.
A day. Oh yeah, absolutely, from start to finish. And moving into the financial industries, you learn how to balance that a little bit more. I also learned in my personal life that I should have called you about 6 months earlier. So very excited to be here with you guys and be part of Ghost Coast Financial Advisors and working with great people like Jay. And looking forward for 2025 to include Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and the Foley area into this business and continue to grow with the company.
All right. Yeah, very good. And sometimes you got to learn what you don't want to do to kind of have an idea what you do want to do. So I think that 6 months, I agree with you, but it was probably crucial for you to kind of see one part of our industry where nothing wrong with it. You just wanted to go in a different direction. When you sat down with somebody and as you continue to work on getting all your appropriate securities licenses, but when you tell them I'm here to be a true financial advisor, and as you and I have discussed often, and I think Jay would agree, one of a really solid and clear paths is being in the independent space to where you can truly work at all times in the client's best interest. Fair?
Yes.
All right, very
absolutely.
good. All right, so that's 2024. That's what we learned in 2024. It is now 2025. So what do we think 2025 has in store for us individually? Again, I'll start. Business-wise, to catch the listeners up to speed, regular listeners know that we've done a couple reruns over the last couple weeks, and thankfully I've got a great catalog to turn to. I've got previous episodes with Jay Stubbs, previous episodes with J.D. Gardner Baptist, previous episodes around estate planning with King and King. If any of y'all want to go back into our catalog, go to our website, gulfcoastfa.com, go to the podcast tab, and you can see all of our great previous episodes there. But one of the reasons that we didn't have time to record a new episode is because my firm that I mentioned earlier, Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, at forming our own RIA this year. Now it took kind of a year of growth and setting things up and getting everything situated to be in a point where we're now growing. So what's happening in 2025? We have added team members, and I'm going to walk through each of them. Obviously, I am the founder and the CEO. I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, but I'm just one person. In that mix, now, of course, regular listeners know you have Michelle Melton, who functions as the co-host of this radio show, the regular co-host of this radio show. Michelle also does a great job with me with client relations, with being out in public, she's big on volunteering, so she pulls me into things where I'll volunteer and occasionally sponsor. We got my son, Peyton Knoll, who has expanded his duties. He is our tech manager. He also produces this radio show, and he's also now starting to handle compliance. I don't know if you knew that, Jay. So he's got an expanded role as he manages his life at Auburn. We've added Pedro Cardozo, who's coming in as a producer, and as we stated earlier, going to be running the Orange Beach office. We welcome back Robert Eichner, who's coming back as a producer. He's got a lot of experience. You've known Robert for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's a great re-addition, if you will. And then we've added Maria, who is Pedro's wife, as an office manager, which quite honestly, if the things that I want to change in 2025, I got to do a better job of delegating. So having somebody there that's so willing to help and learn and is particular. Maria is particular. Is that fair?
Very much so.
Right. And as Jay knows, and you're getting to know, I tend to spin plates and make messes. And so having somebody that's particular to come along and keep me on the straight and narrow is really valuable.
I think that was quickly apparent. When you ask her to do something, expect her to do it right then and there.
She did it immediately. Yeah, something had been sitting on my desk for too long. And with that, so with 2025, what do I think has in store for us with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors? With this new, recently formed and formalized 6-person team, I think we're going to continue to grow. For any of you producers that are listening, we have intentionally set things up to where you have true ownership of your book if you decide to come join us. We did that against my attorney's better advisement, but we made it. I didn't want to go through what I went through, where I came out of kind of a semi-captive environment, and I'm talking industry jargon now, listeners, but I came out of a semi-captive environment where I had ownership of my book, but I definitely had, the previous company had what you would consider right of first refusal. I wanted to set it up where if somebody wanted to come work with us, whether it's Pedro or Robert or any future advisors or producers, they have true ownership of their book, particularly on the clients where they've got the relationship and they bring that business to the door. And I think that's important moving forward. And I think that's going to really help with our growth. I think the Fairhope office is established and strong. I think Pedro's going to take the Orange Beach office to new heights, and I think we definitely have an opportunity, not only just along the Eastern Shore, but in our Mobile office, which functions out of Jay Stubbs' larger offices. And then lastly, for my piece, 2025, you guys both know this, and the listeners already know now that I've let my age out of the bucket here, but I got to start taking my health more seriously. I got a shoulder that's got to get some attention. I got to quit abusing my body. My body, strangely, can take a lot of abuse. There's no reason that I still have a youthful appearance. I should look like I'm 100 years old, but I don't. But I am older now, and it's time to take my health seriously, make some changes like Jay did. Pedro does a great job, listeners, of really exercising and carving out the time, including 5A in basketball, which I'm too old to do, but I got to get back into it. And so those are the things that I'm going to do for 2025. Jay, I'll turn to you. What's 2025 got in store for you, business and profession and personally?
So remember, I work with anywhere from 40 to 50 advisors and agents, just like you guys, Pedro and Josh, here today. You're considered my client. So I have other agents and advisors all along the Gulf Coast, throughout the state of Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. My goal is always to make sure that they are staying on top of their clients' questions and answers regarding all things risk management. So, we've segmented, in my mind, at our world, we're segmenting the first part of the year of 2025 to focus on some disability income protection. So a lot of people realize, hey, I got a little raise, got a little bonus, made a little extra money than I usually make each and every year. So maybe 2024 is a up year for your income. We also need to make sure that that income is protected. So it's time to review people's disability policies, review the ones they have through their employer, review those that have they own independently. And then the middle part of the year, we'll focus on the life insurance world and family needs planning and business planning. And then the last part of the year, we'll do a lot of long-term care planning and estate planning. Really, estate planning topic is going to be a topic all year long because, Josh, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 that then President Trump put into place, a lot of tax cuts came about as a result of that. One of them was the sunset of the estate tax exemption.
Right.
That exemption is going to sunset December 31st of 2025. What does that mean for listeners? Well, you may have heard us talk about it in the past. Josh and I both have. Everybody has an estate, but you might not have an estate tax problem. Every one of us has an estate, married couples, individuals. We all have something that is going to go to the next generation. However, if the federal government deems that it's worth X amount of dollars, currently the exemption is $26 million for a married couple. That's an individual is $13 million. You have no tax liability if your total value of your estate is less than $13 million, or if you're married less than $26 million. Once you cross that threshold, then you do have an estate tax situation. Well, that threshold is going to drop. It's going to be cut in half, basically. The projected estate tax exemption for 2026 and beyond is $7 million for an individual, or roughly $14 million for a married couple. What does that mean? Well, we've just cut the whole bottle of estate value in half. There might not be a lot of people worth $30 million, but there might be some people that are worth $15 million or plus when you look at their estate, their land, their buildings, their business interests, all of the things above. So we want to make sure that people are aware, hey, estate tax currently is set to sunset. However, obviously we have a new administration, we have a new Congress. Things are going to maybe have a legislative change. We'll have to keep our eye on what's going on with the estate tax situation and if that exemption is going to make any changes, or they're just going to let it sunset and ride it out. They are realizing that they are needing some revenue. That's where you hear Trump and everybody saying we're going to have some cuts at the federal government level. Well, where are those cuts going to come from? We don't know yet. Can't wait to see what happens after January 20th when they are installed into office. We should see some major moves at the end of this month, and I think everybody should pay attention to it on how it would personally affect them and their business. So a lot of that, and then personally, gosh, Josh, I think I'm just going to keep on doing the same old thing. I'm just going to be, if it rains outside, I'm going to chill out. I'm not going to drive as fast. When we showed up here this morning, you were like, everything okay? I was like, yeah, man, it's just rainy outside. I'm chill.
That's right.
And it has worked for our benefits, right?
Absolutely.
All right, well, Pedro, we'll let you wrap up this segment. So what's 2025 got in store for Pedro and your wonderful family?
Oh, 2025 is going to be great. And this is a great segue from Jay to me here. For personal, I think finding purpose in business to me was extremely important for 2025, and I think that this new venture that you've invited me into is going to give me a lot more purpose than what I was doing before. Being able to help somebody, being able to leave them in a better situation than we found them. Right? It's one of the mottos, and as far as business, I think Jay and I were speaking about it. Everyone is really quick to plan a trip to Disney World in the beginning of the year. Everyone is really quick to pay for their car insurance really quickly. But for business, I want to educate and use the resources and the incredible things that Gulf Coast Financial Advisors has in hand to teach people about long-term care, about disability insurance. That's some of the things that some people don't think about very often, and I think it's extremely important. I had a situation about a year and a half ago that my brother-in-law passed with the Widowmaker, and that really began
cardiac event.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and he passed, unfortunately, and it was
caught you by surprise, man.
It really did. It really caught us by surprise there, and he wasn't prepared. He wasn't ready, and unfortunately, nobody had educated us. So now here I am in the position to educate people and to bring people into a position they don't have to go through the same things that me and my family had to go through. And Jay, I love listening to you, and the long-term care and disability insurance is incredible. The planning of it and the education of it. So
nothing is as powerful, Pedro, as having a personal testimony and then sitting down in front of clients and prospects and sharing, well, we've been through it. Let me tell you how to fix it or to alleviate it or not have to go through it yourself. That happens with long-term care situations. That happens with people that become disabled and lose their jobs or can't do their job function, and they need to get that income replaced and they don't have anywhere to turn. And that, more importantly, also has to do with life insurance. Obviously, family business needs come to need life insurance. So my personal story, Pedro's personal story are impactful.
Very good. Well, listeners, if you would like to start a conversation around your hopes and dreams, particularly around your retirement planning and your wealth management and your investment management, then we invite you to give us a call, 251-327-2124, or you can reach us through the website, gulfcoastfa.com. So that'd be Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, maybe, coming up.
Oh, wow. I forgot about that news topic. Boy, he knows how to press some buttons.
He does, man. I said we should do Ocean of America, just totally clear up all the confusion.
Well, I'm worried about the people that live in New Mexico. What's that going to be called?
Anyway, so Gulf, like the Gulf of Mexico currently anyway, Coast, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Now, when you're on our site, you can send a direct message. Just look for the contact page, or you can click on the blue button in the upper right-hand corner. That will put a free introductory phone call on my calendar. If you want me to call you, make sure you include your phone number. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're calling me. All right, folks, coming up next, there's always a lot going on in the world, particularly the world of finance, investments, and money. Every week, we scour the internet for financial articles related to our topic of the day, special articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. So join us after the break to hear Jay, Pedro, and I discuss this week's relevant headlines in our News Headlines of the Week segment. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back to Coasting in Retirement. Your host, Josh Knoll here. So, as we discussed before the break, every week we scour the internet for financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. Our job, or at least we think it is to help you all understand how these headlines impact you, especially when it comes to your money. So now, quick note, if you want to read our referenced articles yourself, we include the links in our show transcript, which you can find on our website, gulfcoastfa.com. Look under the podcast tab. We upload our episodes every Monday after the show airs on FM Talk 106.5 every Sunday. So now with Michelle playing hooky this week, we've asked Pedro to step in her place and read this week's headlines, and then Jay and I will take turns responding. You good with that, Pedro?
Absolutely.
I hope he is. He's got his script ready.
Let's go, man. Let's get after it.
Some big shoes to fill, I'll tell you that.
No doubt. With little shoes.
High heels.
She's got little bitty feet, by the way. All right, so let's get after it with our news headlines of the week. You're up, Pedro.
All right, let's do it, Josh. The first headline is for you. I understand that you normally, and from listening to your show before, you don't like to timestamp any of these episodes, but
we try to be evergreen if we can.
We're going to let our Sunday listeners know that we are recording this episode on Friday, January 10th, just a few days before this airs. And anyone that pays attention to the stock market knows it's shaping up to be an interesting day in the market. Yahoo Finance has an article titled Stock Market Today. Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ sink as job reports blows past expectations. So, Josh, Why would the fact that the U.S. economy added 250,000 jobs and unemployment sank to 4.1% be bad news to the stock market?
Well, it's funny. We live in funny times, Pedro. Historically, if you got a strong jobs report and you got a low unemployment rate, generally speaking, the market would respond in a favorable fashion, right? What's happened over the last couple of years, particularly since COVID, is, as everyone knows, this is not breaking news here, but we've had inflation issues. In fact, Jay and I recorded an episode way back in early COVID times talking about how inflation we thought was going to play out. Newsflash, he was right. I was wrong. It lingered way far longer than I thought it would. But the fear is this. The Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, has already given indication in December that the speed of Fed funds interest rate cuts was going to be slower in 2025. Again, any of y'all that pay attention to the market, if you recall, there was a sell-off at the end of December that was kind of centered around that news. What the market does, the stock market is a voting machine in the short run. It's a weighing machine in the long run. Well, what it did is it priced in more aggressive rate cuts coming into 2025, basically on the heels of Trump getting elected. They thought there would be more aggressive rate cuts. Jerome Powell put a stop to that very quickly with his words in December. And then what has happened now, back to the point of this article, we got a strong jobs report, we got unemployment low. That, just by its sheer nature, tends to put a little bit of pressure on inflation. Now, listeners, inflation has become this horribly dirty word, and there's reason for that. Some of you listening remember, rest in peace, President Carter, but when he was in office back in the late 70s, we had terrible inflation. In fact, we had stagflation. We had high interest rates, and we had a slow economic growth. We had stagflation. What they're worried about is with this, the economy still humming along, there's going to be upward pressure on prices, which, again, historically, you want at least some upward pressure on prices. You want to be working, if you're doing your job now and you're doing a good job, you want to be rewarded with higher pay or higher profits every year. That's kind of the point. You don't want to just be sitting there treading water or, God forbid, actually going backwards with your income or your profits. Well, when you have these upward pressures, when it gets a little out of skew, and most economists would argue that we haven't fully recovered from the inflation boogeyman yet, if you will. The concern is that you're going to take Jerome Powell's already inclination to slow roll interest rate cuts, and he's going to slow roll them anymore. Really what's going to happen, Pedro, is now we're going to pivot to what's going to happen in March when he makes his next announcement, and the market's really going to be holding its breath to some degree on what he says about interest rates cuts, because high interest rates, on one hand, those of you all that are already in retirement, you've seen the benefit with your fixed income investments. You've seen the benefits with the rates you could see at bank CDs, money market funds, money market accounts, things of that nature.
Annuity rates.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. But on the reverse side of that, it's hard on consumers. It makes it hard to, mortgage rates are higher, car loans are higher, basically across the board. Because
grocery store visits are higher.
Right. That's right.
Clothes for the kids is higher.
Yeah, because the Fed funds rate, it doesn't. Jerome Powell is not going to be setting the rate directly for your mortgage, but they all track what the Fed sets, because that's the overnight lending rate between the Fed and banks, and that kind of sets the tone across the board. So that is why we are seeing, again, we normally don't timestamp this, but that's why we're seeing yet another sell-off, because there is fear that inflation is here, going to be around a little longer, that as silly or as convoluted as it sounds, that the economy is actually stronger than what analysts had predicted, and that there's going to be less rate cutting. We shall see. My counter argument, and this is something for another show, and also look at our previous episodes, is that as an investor, particularly those of you in or near retirement, you should be having that conversation with your advisor, and your investment manager and your advisor should have a plan that takes into accommodation the fact that there's going to be more volatility this year, whether we like it or not.
And if volatility, Josh and Pedro, is something that you listeners do not like, if you are sleeping uneasy at night because of what happened on the downturn in the market and the seesawing of the market, then that's when you have a conversation with somebody like Josh to say, hey, what can we do to minimize this? Are there ways we can still grow our money but not have as much volatility? The answer is yes. And that's just a matter of sitting down with any advisor, but specifically Josh or Pedro, and saying, we're uneasy about what 2025 looks like. What can we do to help our uneasiness?
Yep, very good. All right, Pedro, that was good. Who's up next? What you got next?
All right, that was exciting. That was a really exciting answer there. The next thing we have here is for Jay, and this is right along your business here, Jay. You're probably very familiar with this next article. It's from Insurance News Net. Are you familiar with that?
I am very much. I read it a lot.
Okay, very nice. Well, this one is about artificial intelligence and the effect it may have on life and health insurance. It's titled AI in Life and Health, What to Expect into 2025 and Beyond. This article states that artificial intelligence will result in more accurate premium pricing, faster claim processing, and better chatbots. But it also says that the insurance agents are going to have to learn to cut through the chatbot clutter, which is never fun. And honestly, Jay, I don't know anyone that would pick talking to a computer over a human being. I sure wouldn't. And so what's your stance on how AI is going to affect the industry that you've spent so long in 2025?
Well, the insurance companies and the investment companies are now taking over the chatbot world, just like we've seen chatbots. I think they emerged on websites several years ago where you could, instead of hopping on a phone call for a customer service representative, you could type a question in a box and somebody would respond to that question. That used to be live people. Now they've designed these chatbots so that if you ask a question in a box on the website, if you're properly logged in, meaning they know it's you with your policy numbers or your investment account information, what have you, then they can grab information from your accounts, your policies, and they can provide that to you through this chatbot. It's really kind of neat. Does it take the place of talking to somebody if there's a serious issue? No, but it gets you the answers that you're looking for. Who's the beneficiary listed on my life insurance policy? On my qualified plan, who's the beneficiary or beneficiaries listed there. You can get certain simple things through the chat. Now, on the insurance world, as it relates to underwriting as agents and advisors work with clients, the medical data, that community is working hard and fast to adapt to the AI. And what insurance companies need to do is take, Pedro, your health history that we've compiled through questions that the agent or advisor asks you, and then we populate that into the insurance company's application for life insurance, long-term care, disability. They then use artificial intelligence to give a quicker assessment of your health. They run it against their underwriting manuals. They run it against a lot of lab testing results, means and medians of lab testing, if you will, if you happen to have to get blood work. So what they're trying to do is just expedite the whole underwriting process. There are ways that we can get life insurance policies approved at the same time that a client comes in and says, I want $1 million of term life. We can literally sit down, if they have all of their information ready to go, we can sit down and populate the data, and we may have an approval within minutes or even maybe an hour or two. That's not everybody. Certainly they're going to have
Is that because of AI?
A lot of it is because the insurance companies have adapted artificial intelligence, have adapted ways to make their underwriting process much more efficient. Right. So easier to get approvals. Doesn't mean that we still can't, they don't, if you've got a health history issue, they certainly want to go grab that doctor's records. That in and of itself is still going to be a challenge, but even that is moving a lot faster. So AI is helping us with customer service. AI is helping us with underwriting and claims assessment and things of that nature, making it quicker. That if we have a long-term care or a disability claim and we're waiting on our money to come in, the AI platforms are making it easier for the insurance companies to check all the boxes, so to speak, and get those things out. So I really like some of the service models that we're seeing right now. I don't think that it's going to go backwards. We have seen tremendous efforts with companies growing with the chip making and NVIDIA and even the AI robots that are out there right now. So everybody is falling falling in love with artificial intelligence. We just have to be smart on how we use it.
Very good. Well said. All right. You got one for me? Another one for me, Pedro? I'm ready.
I do. I have another one for you. A lot of research was done here. So we have a very well-known financial news site called The Street. Has a recent article simply titled 2025 Outlook on the S&P 500. This article talks about potential impacts of inflation, government policy, and corporate profits on one of the most well-known market indexes, which is the S&P 500. Before you give your thoughts on this article, though, can you explain to our listeners our listeners what the S&P 500 index is and what other indexes you want to pay attention to for a client's investment portfolios.
All right, well, that's a great one. And the street is a good resource, and it's non-paywalled. So let's talk about, to answer your first question, the S&P 500 index is technically called the Standard & Poor's 500 index, and it's basically a collection of 500 selected leading publicly traded companies, okay? So there's 500 individual stocks that make up the S&P 500. And they're not necessarily static. A lot of people don't realize that sometimes someone will be asked to leave the S&P 500 or kicked out, if you will, and somebody new will come in. In fact, if I could be wrong with this, but I'm pretty sure Intel was recently taken out, and at one point NVIDIA or another chip manufacturer was putting in. Savvy listeners, if I'm wrong, I'm generally right on that statement. But what most people don't realize with the S&P 500, what's intended to do? It's intended to give a broad look at the overall health of the stock market using leading companies that are actively traded. Does that make sense, Pedro?
Yes.
Right. Now, it is how do they get that index number? They track it based on market capitalization. So bear with me, listeners. This is important. So I just told you there were 500 companies, 500 individual stocks in the S&P 500. Well, common sense would tell you, okay, well, then that means if you got you're one company, you're 1/500th of that index. That's not accurate. What they do is they base the index on market capitalization. So a company that has a higher market valuation will be a larger percentage of that overall index tracking for the S&P 500. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, for example, right now, you can argue this is right, wrong, or indifferent, but Tesla's market capitalization far outweighs Ford's market cap, even though by definition Ford makes way more cars than Tesla does, right? So in that S&P 500, the movement of Tesla is going to have a more proportional effect to the overall S&P 500 index than maybe the move you'd see in a Ford or a General Motors or so on and so forth, right? And you've heard of the Magnificent Seven: NVIDIA, Meta, which is Facebook, Google, which is Alphabet, NVIDIA, and the big companies, they have a disproportionate share of the overall index valuation for an S&P 500, right? Got it? Some of the other indexes, you asked us which ones we look at. I can tell you at the bottom of my scroll every day I look at, and I don't stare at 3 computer screens all day with this stuff. That's why I have a robust investment management team and sub-advisor support with Aptus Capital Advisors. But I do keep track of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I do keep track of the S&P 500. I look at the NASDAQ, and I look at the Russell 2000, which, again, these are 2,000 companies versus 500. I will say one thing that, in my opinion, the Dow Jones is something that I do keep track of, but a lot of people don't realize the Dow Jones only tracks 30 companies, right? And the Dow Jones Industrial Index, unless I'm mistaken, I think it's the oldest indexing tracker. Is that right?
That's right.
Jay?
Yeah.
Right. And so it tends to be a little bit more, the word industrial's in there. So you're going to have a little bit more industrial manufacturing type of components to this. You're going to have 3M in there. You're going to have Boeing. You're going to have Caterpillar. You're going to have companies actually make physical products. Nothing right or wrong with that. It's just that you're going to have a little slightly different and more narrowed skew version of what's going on in the broader indexes like the S&P 500 or particular the Russell 2000 or the NASDAQ. Also, the Dow Jones does not weight by market capitalization. It weights by the price of the individual stock. So, for example, if Caterpillar is up and 3M is down, the actual price of that stock is going to be a more determining factor on the overall measurement of that. And that, in simple terms, folks, that's why a lot of times you will see the largest percentage point drop or gain when you're looking at the Dow Jones, because now you're talking about 30 companies where one company can have an outsized effect on the overall index. We tend to generally skew towards more broader base, particularly in modern society and modern investing, where I don't know what the number is, Jay, but how many publicly traded companies are there now compared to 50 years ago? 100? Who knows? Thousands.
Thousands and thousands.
Right. So you want something, if you're going to pay attention to these things, in my opinion, you actually want to have something that gives you a little bit broader view on it. Now, to answer your question quickly on the article, if you want to get an economist's prediction on what's going to happen in 2025. And I say this as an economist by training with a economics degree from the Harvard of the Midwest, Missouri State. You know, those predictions and $2 will usually buy you a cheap cup of coffee at the gas station. You gotta take into what they say to some degree. My gosh, Jay, how long did they predict? I mean, if you predict a recession long enough, it's like a broken clock. It's going to be right twice.
Yeah.
Once, right one, whatever it is, twice a day. It's going to be right. You get the idea. The more important thing is you want to have a portfolio that is designed, Jay mentioned this earlier, you want to have a portfolio that is designed to let your winners run, but also make volatility an asset class. Jay referred to it earlier. Does your portfolio use volatility as an asset class? Is there a plan? Does your investment portfolio have a plan when everybody's running to the door? Are you just running to the door? Are you sitting on the chair? There's a way to do both. There's a way to handle volatility inside your investment portfolio using a variety of tools that we have at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. If you want to have that specific conversation, 251-327-2124. Very good. We got one more?
Hey, I just did a quick search. There are over around the world 55,000 publicly traded companies.
Very good. Wow.
In the United States, there are about 4,300, and that has been shrinking in the United States as far as publicly traded companies.
That's good information.
Now, to make it even more confusing to those that are listening, as of August of 24, there were 8,700 mutual funds in the United States, and then globally, there's 140,000 mutual funds.
Gosh,
that's amazing to me.
That is amazing.
And a mutual fund is just a compilation of different publicly traded companies.
That's right.
And then how many ETFs are out there? An exchange traded fund. Globally, there are 10,319, and in the United States, there are 3,500.
Well, and wrapping up that part, Jay, Pedro, before you go on to the last news headline, I feel like our job as financial advisors, this is very important. All that jargon we just threw at you all, our job is not to make you be afraid of it or to stoke the fears of the stock market. Our job is to help you understand the basics of it so that you have a certain level of comfort in investing, because it has been proven for many, many, many decades that the best way to stay ahead of the inflation monster and stay ahead of interest rates and all that is to invest in reputable, solid, profitable companies and let time do its work. That's the last thing I'm saying. That's our job to explain that, not to give people an artificial fear of the stock market. Fair?
Yeah.
Amen.
Perfectly said.
Okay. All right.
Perfectly said. All right. We have one last article here, and before I say it, I will tell you this. Michelle makes this sound way easier than it is. So Michelle, you're very much missed. But the last article it's going to be for Jay on Jay Stubbs' website, and I actually just used that particular tab, the resources tab, and I think it's important to bring up this landing page because I know it's been a great source of knowledge for both Josh and for me, and I believe it has a ton of client-facing resources such as life insurance needs calculator and an actual term life quote engine. I'm assuming this term life quote engine has access to many, many carriers, right?
It does, and I'm glad you brought it up. We designed our website to not have a username or password firewall or a block wall, what some people use as a paywall, meaning you got to have to, like if you want to read certain magazines or newspapers these days, you got to have a paywall username or password, and you have to pay monthly for your subscription. I'm okay with that, but we didn't want an advisor or an agent to have to go through a username or password to grab the resources that they need to grab on the fly to have a meaningful conversation with a client on anything surrounding long-term care, disability income protection, life insurance, or annuities. So at providencepartners.org in the resource section, many of the items in there are designed for the agents and advisors, but a lot of the consumer-facing pieces that are consumer-friendly are also there. So you can see current MIGA rates. Anybody that's listening can go click on and say, what's the best multi-year guaranteed annuity rates out there? 3, 5, 7, 10 years. There's a retirement calculator that's in part of that. In the life insurance section, there are lots of great items in there. My favorite is the life insurance paramed exam tips. You'd be surprised how many people don't understand the importance of a paramed exam and what you should not be doing the days leading up to that paramed exam. In the long-term care section, there's a nice piece on there called 6 Ways to Get Long-Term Care. One of the ones we just added that, Josh, I think you're going to have as maybe a link on your website, which is a downloadable document that says why employer life insurance is not enough. A lot of people, especially those working for companies, think that group term life or 2 times salary and any supplemental insurance coverage they get, that's enough. Well, we do a lot of needs analysis and they realize really quickly, gosh, I don't have enough. So we created a piece. I think, Josh, you'll have that where people can insert their name and email address and they can get that document downloaded to them. But thanks for bringing that to our attention on the resources. It is a great place for obviously agents and advisors, but we hold nothing back as everything that we give to customers is, or a lot of what we give is going to be found on that resources page as well.
Very good. Well, listeners, I hope you learned something from our discussion around these financial headlines and these resources. We argue they're all important pieces of information that impact those of you in or near retirement. If you would like to continue this conversation with us, why don't you give us a call, 251-327-2124, or you can go to our website, gulfcoastfa.com. You can send a direct message there, or don't forget, you can always click on the blue button in the upper right-hand corner. That will put a 15-minute introductory phone call on my calendar. If you want me to call you, make sure you are specific with that and include your phone number. Well, fellas, I got some bad news. We're out of time. So regular listeners, you're not going to get to hear Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. We'll have it back next week. Did you have anything, Jerry?
We're just going to give you a break for your 50th birthday.
Again, happy birthday to you.
I appreciate that, guys. Well, folks, that's it for us this week here in Coasting Retirement. I want to give a huge thank you to my great 2 co-hosts here. That was Jay Stubbs, Providence Partners. Thank you, buddy. Also, thank you very much for sponsoring the show. All right. Pedro Cardozo, working out of the Orange Beach office with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. Folks down there in South Baldwin, make sure you can reach out to Pedro through the website, get an appointment set. We have a beautiful office down there. Thank you to our awesome radio station. That's FM Talk 106.5 out of Mobile. Many thanks to the provider of our show music, that is local band Sloth Racer. Huge thank you to show producer, that is my son, Peyton Null, as in his freshman year there at Auburn University. And as always, my sincere appreciation for all of you out there that have been listening and joining us on this journey. We'd love to be part of your journey as well. Till we talk again next Sunday, have a wonderful and productive week. This has been Coasting Retirement with Josh Knoll. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, LLC, known as GCFA, is a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Alabama and in such other jurisdictions where it is registered, filed the required notices, or is otherwise excluded or exempted from such registration and/or notice filing requirements. Registration does not indicate or imply that GCFA has attained a particular level of skill or ability, nor does it constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, or any other state securities regulator. The Coasting in Retirement radio program serves mainly to disseminate general information, including those pertaining to GCFA's advisory services, together with access to additional investment-related information, publications, materials, and links. The publication of this radio show should not be construed by any client and/or prospective client as GCFA's solicitation to effect or attempt to effect transactions in securities, nor should be interpreted as GCFA providing personalized investment advice or any type of professional advice for compensation wherever this program is broadcast. Any subsequent direct communication by GCFA with a prospective client will be conducted by a representative that is either registered or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from registration in the state where the prospective client resides. Certain information, news stories, headlines, data, charts, graphs, figures, or statistics presented on this radio program may have been obtained from third-party sources that are believed to be generally reliable, but which GCFA may not have independently verified. GCFA does not and cannot guarantee the timeliness, accuracy, or reliability of any such third-party information and undertakes no obligation to update or correct any information that may become obsolete, unreliable, or inaccurate. This radio program also contains the opinions, views, and perspectives expressed by Josh Knoll and any other GCFA representative, which are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, views, or perspectives of GCFA as a firm. Such personal views and opinions should not be construed as endorsements or professional advice from GCFA. GCFA makes no representation or warranty regarding the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any information on this radio program and disclaims any liability for any direct or indirect loss or damage incurred from using or relying on such information. GCFA and Providence Partners are not affiliated, nor are any of their respective representatives.